Okay, good evening and welcome to the County Executive's third Budget Town Hall for District 2, hosted by your County Executive, Johnny Olszewski Jr., and your County Councilman, Izzy Patoka. I'm Amanda Carr from the County Executive's Office of Community Engagement, and I am pleased to introduce to you Michelle Bernstein, my colleague and your Community Outreach Coordinator.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here for yet another budget town hall with the county executive and Councilman Patoka. I know each year they've looked a little bit different. This one is no different. I'm really thankful, especially this year, to be here. And I know many of you feel the same way, just looking forward to hearing what you have to add and following up afterwards.
Thank you, Michelle. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Patoka for brief remarks, but first, I wanted to thank those who submitted their questions in advance. The County Executive, one of the department heads on the call, or Councilman Patoka will answer as many of your budget-related questions as possible. For those of you who are watching through social media, you may submit your budget-related questions in the comment section. They will be answered after the County Executive's budget presentation. If we cannot answer your questions tonight, we will have Michelle Bernstein, your District 2 representative, follow up with you. And now it is my honor and privilege to welcome your Councilman, Izzy Patoka.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you, County Executive, and to everyone. Welcome to the beautiful 2nd District of Baltimore County. Last year, we were at the Gordon Center, which is one of our budget priorities this year. Now, we're not at the Gordon Center this year, but it's great to be with everyone, even in a virtual forum. I want to introduce what I believe is the best county council team in the land. And so if you're at home, feel free to applause for each of these council 2 team members that I'm about to introduce. First, I want to acknowledge great Chief of Staff, Justin Silberman. And I hear people applauding. I hear the applause, yes. And also Ashley Wallington, who is the 2nd District Director of Community Relations. And Ashley, you're getting a nice applause. And last but not least, Carlos Gonzalez, our Special Projects Director. And Carlos, too, is getting a nice applause. I can hear it throughout the entire 2nd District for all 3 of these outstanding team members. And County Executive, I just want to thank you for bringing Baltimore County into the 21st century. We spent decades really treading water, being a little bit behind the curve of being a modern county. And I think in 2 years, your accomplishments have been remarkable in bringing us into the 21st century. And you talked about transparency, and you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And I thank you for that. Thank you for appointing me to the 2 groups that I really enjoy working on, the nuts and bolts of government, the Code Enforcement Working Group, and the Solid Waste Work Group. And I want to also acknowledge the great work of Stacy Rogers, your County Administrative Officer, and also DeAndrea Walker, the Director of Public Works, who both have done an outstanding job on the Solid Waste Work Group. And I thank them for appointing me to the subhauler subcommittee of the Solid Waste Work Group. It's all about nuts and bolts of government if we're going to do it right here in Baltimore County. There's great potential right here in the 2nd District. And the potential you'll probably hear of, the potential is our priorities here in the 2nd District of Baltimore County. Certainly, there's great potential with the Pikesville Armory. We sorely lack recreation space and the amenities that the Pikesville Armory would bring. There's great potential in Paul's Farm. As I mentioned, open space is always a priority. And there's great potential in Reisterstown's Main Street, as well as the Pikesville Commercial District. These are priorities for us. You'll hear more from stakeholders in the 2nd District and the people that fight day in and day out to make the second district stronger. So I want to thank everyone that's joining us virtually. And I also want to thank you, County Executive Olszewski, and your team for working collaboratively with the County Council and also with the residents of the second district. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce County Executive Johnny Olszewski.
Thanks, Councilman Patoka. I really appreciate that introduction and your partnership. All the progress we've realized the past couple of years has been a direct result of having great partners on the County Council, and I certainly count you among them as top of mind. Good evening to everyone else. Thanks for joining us, if only virtually. As the councilman said, it was so great to be with you last year at the Gordon Center. Looking forward to hopefully next year returning there. It was a really wonderful experience, but looking forward to tonight as well. In addition to being joined by Councilman Patoka, I'm also joined by all of the departments in Baltimore County, almost all of whom are represented by their department director and or deputy director. And as Izzy mentioned, our administrative officer, Stacy Rogers. As I said, I'm also thrilled to be working alongside our councilmen, our departments, and all of you as we build a better Baltimore County. And over these past 2 years, we have really set the standard in local government. And it's been done with your help and your partnership. We've set a new and better way of doing things in Baltimore County. So when we convened last year, it was under a very different set of circumstances. Working with you, we had closed an $81 million deficit. We put our county's fiscal house in order, and we maintained our AAA bond rating, something that just last week was affirmed again, even in the midst of a pandemic. We still have our AAA bond ratings. And we were on stronger financial footing, positioned for progress. We had enacted unprecedented ethics and accountability reforms. We had been releasing all sorts of public data dashboards, and we were bringing new levels of transparency to county government. And we were set last year to keep building upon record funding for our schools and other investments in our communities. But then abruptly, the COVID-19 pandemic upended our entire way of life. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we were forced to work with the County Council, Councilman Patoka and his colleagues, to cut about $100 million of spending. So last year, we passed a budget that was focused on the essentials: education, public safety, and those critical services our residents depend on. We also began preparing for this unprecedented crisis, the likes of which we had never seen before. Around this time last year, we had our very first case of COVID-19. We now have over 51,000 confirmed cases, and unfortunately, we have lost over 1,200 of our neighbors and loved ones. We've seen countless residents lose their jobs or their businesses, and we've seen almost 250,000 Baltimore County residents have to claim uninsurance employment. But within weeks, we were able to stand up a COVID-19 testing operation, ultimately providing over 440,000 tests free and without a doctor's note, started distributing PPE, and we created a robust contact tracing operation. We've also seen the needs in and have stepped up to meet those needs in our communities, because we believe, Councilman Patoka and I believe, that local government has an obligation to help the people who can't meet their basic needs. So we're meeting it. In partnership with our school system and public library, we've given out over 13 million meals. We've also partnered with the Maryland Food Bank, local businesses like H&S Bakery, and our local farmers. Through our local eviction prevention program, we've already pushed about $5 million out the door to help 1,400 households stay housed. In June, we started phase 1 of that program and gave about $1.2 million to nearly 485 households. In phase 2, we put forward an additional $5 million with nonprofits like the Community Assistance Network and Catholic Charities. And through these initial phases, we found that the majority of applications for rental assistance came from 9 zip codes that had the highest level of housing instability and poverty. They also had some of the highest rates of COVID-19 transmission. So we're keeping people in houses and we're fighting the virus. And thanks to an innovative partnership with the United Way of Central Maryland, we provided an additional $4.2 million to over 900 households in those communities. And we look forward to doing more on that front. Councilman Patoka and his colleagues recently helped us pass and accept a $24.7 million grant from the U.S. Treasury Department through its Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And we expect that we will be able to help at least an additional 1,250 county families as a result. We're also closing the digital divide in Baltimore County, providing 6 months of Comcast Internet Essentials to over 11,000 households. We created a program to help low-income families pay for childcare, supporting those who have school-age children in remote learning, creating also a similar program to support county employees who have school-age children. And we are doing all that we can to help our neighbors, residents, and businesses alike get to the other side of this crisis. That is why we're providing millions of dollars to help restaurants and businesses stay open, and millions more to keep customers safe. We've awarded over 1,350 grant applications across 6 programs, totaling $21 million. Now, over 13 million of that have gone to our restaurants who've been very hard hit. Through our small business reimbursement grant program, we've helped nearly 300 small businesses install equipment to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And we've distributed over $4 million as part of our small business relief grant program. We're very proud in Baltimore County that over half of all of our grants have been awarded to minority and women-owned firms. And now, with the arrival of the vaccine, we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Our first vaccine was given on December 23rd. Since then, Baltimore County has consistently been a leader in the state for the number of residents vaccinated by local jurisdictions. And we are capable of giving 1,000 doses per hour at just our state fairgrounds clinic. That's over 14, and because of that, over 144,000 residents have been vaccinated, over 17% of our residents. And now over 87,000 residents have received both of their doses. That's over 10% of our residents. But we know we have more work to do, and we're committed to doing all that we can to ensure all of our residents are vaccinated as quickly as they can be. We recently opened up a new clinic at CCBC Essex, which followed our second clinic at the Randallstown Community Center. Also now partnering with Uber to ensure that those without transportation can get to a county-run vaccine clinic. In addition, our health and fire departments will work to vaccinate those who can't leave their homes and who are homebound. But again, we can do so much more, and we know that many others are still seeking a vaccine. So as we do all that we can to vaccinate, and we've been heralded as a statewide, if not national leader, we ask for your patience because we do have a continued limited number of vaccines. But in the meantime, if we continue to do all that we can, we will win. Make sure that we continue wearing our masks and practicing social distancing. Even amid the crisis to COVID-19, we've also continued our work to strengthen our communities, taking significant actions to reform county government and move Baltimore County forward. I'm very proud of what we've done these past 2 years in partnership with Councilman Patoka and his colleagues. In the 2nd District, we have dedicated over $114 million towards improving our schools, including $51 million for a replacement at Summit Park Elementary, which is now in the design phase, and $50 million for a replacement of Bedford, which is also in the design phase. In addition, we have millions more for maintenance and repairs at schools across the district, including new roofs at Fort Garrison, Millbrook, Reisterstown, and Timber Grove elementary schools. Moving forward, we'll keep doing all that we can to meet the needs of every single student and every community. Additionally, we have $3.3 million budgeted for the renovation of the Reisterstown Library, which will be completed this summer, and protecting our open space remains a top priority. So we'll continue to do all that we can to ensure access to parks across Baltimore County. I know that's a hot issue in District 2 and for all of Baltimore County. We have budgeted millions for improvements to recreation and parks facilities in D2. That includes nearly $250,000 for a new multi-purpose court at Reisterstown Elementary, $600,000 for a community park at Church Lane, which is now in the design phase, about $500,000 for a new turf field at Meadowwood Regional Park, and $900,000 for a turf field at Pikesville High School, which will begin construction this June. We are also proud to have budgeted a record $35 million for Recs and Parks in our upcoming capital budget because we have an obligation to maintain our infrastructure and provide those critical services. That's why we budgeted hundreds of millions of dollars to maintain and improve our water and sewer infrastructure, as well as keeping our roads and bridges safe for drivers and pedestrians. We were on track prior to COVID to move forward on a study to examine options for walkers, bicyclists, and drivers in Pikesville. And we look forward to restarting that work as we emerge from the crisis. We also have budgeted a record amount of funding for road resurfacing. In the 2nd District, we have paved 27 miles of road at a cost of $2.4 million. As we continue our work ahead, we remain committed to innovating and doing all that we can to ensure your communities continue to thrive. In Pikesville and Green Spring, our team has been hard at work implementing the Pikesville Revitalization Action Plan, which we published late last summer. And as part of that plan, the planning department is actually in the process of finishing up a parking study for the Pikesville Commercial District. And our Department of Environmental Protection is continuing with a litter study for the commercial corridor. We look forward to continuing to implement that action plan. And as the state's legislative session continues, we will work to continue to bring back resources to Baltimore County. As part of our capital request to Governor Hogan, we asked that the state give a multi-year capital commitment of $3 million to support our revitalization efforts at the Pikesville Armory. And we're grateful that Governor Hogan included $500,000 in his budget to support this project. We will continue working with Councilman Patoka and our state legislators in District 11 to make sure that we bring that money home and look at what we can do locally to support that effort as well. In addition to that funding, Baltimore County also has already provided a $160,000 grant to support the revitalization efforts at that site. This project remains one of our top priorities, and we will continue to work with you and our state partners to ensure that the community's vision is fulfilled. Thank you for your partnership and all of this work in District 2. Across Baltimore County in our first 2 years, we've provided back-to-back years of record funding for public education, including almost $250 million towards shovel-ready school construction projects. Now, coupled with state funding, these funds will allow us to complete the county's Schools for Our Future program and then begin to address other long-term needs. But we must receive state support. So we're so glad the General Assembly has overridden the governor's veto of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which also is now unlocking $462 million for school construction under the Built to Learn Act. The Blueprint will help us raise teacher pay, make key investments inside the classroom, and ensure our children have the resources they need to be successful. As we continue to strengthen our schools, we're working closely with BCPS and a nationally recognized consultant, Hannah Design, to develop a long-term plan to address our school construction needs. Throughout this process and in collaboration with you, we will form a long-term plan to ensure that every child, every teacher, every family across Baltimore County has access to a world-class learning environment. As we invest in our school system, we also are doing all that we can to keep our community safe. And I'm proud to report that Baltimore County remains a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. Violent crime rates have declined over the past year, and that continues a years-long downward trend. I'm grateful for the work by Chief Hyatt and the men and women of the police department. And last year with Councilman Patoka, I shared our update to the crime fighting strategy, which included enhanced data and analytics, increasing crime prevention efforts in our hotspots, and participating in the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. We are seeing the benefits of having these measures in place. And now you can track our crime data using a new dashboard that we released just last month. Those resources can be found at baltimorecountymd.gov/BCStat. This past summer, we also heard calls for justice across our country, our state, and here in Baltimore County. And working with your councilman and others, we became the first jurisdiction in the region to take a major step forward on police reform. And with the bipartisan Smart Policing Act, Baltimore County now bans chokeholds, requires additional de-escalation and implicit bias training, prevents us from hiring officers with prior records of misconduct, and codified many other reforms that I had started prior to the legislative conversation. We've also in Baltimore County increased transparency in the police department by developing a data dashboard that tracks the use of force by and complaints against law enforcement officers, and by creating the county's first ever policy requiring the release of body camera footage. Baltimore County is also tackling the opioid epidemic head on, as we continue to have the second highest number of opioid-related deaths in the state. Now, fortunately, we haven't seen the dramatic increase that other jurisdictions have seen during the pandemic, but we continue to lose far too many of our loved ones to addiction. In our first year, we hired the county's first ever opioid strategy coordinator, and we began developing a comprehensive plan to end that epidemic by doing things like expanding harm reduction services like needle exchange and drug drop boxes. We're also increasing access to treatment with a new center in Owings Mills and another currently in the planning stages. We're also partnering with Shepherd Pratt to develop a hub and spoke model for treatment in Baltimore County. This will be focused on individuals who have both mental health and addiction challenges. And in Baltimore County, we'll continue to look for options to increase access to treatment across the board. Residents also deserve a Baltimore County that will remain vibrant and livable for generations. So we are working to enact sustainable policies that protect our planet. And we are instilling a culture of sustainability throughout county government. Over the past year, we began developing our first ever greenhouse gas inventory and countywide climate action plan. We restarted our glass recycling program, which was suspended back in 2013. And we're pursuing new innovations like recapturing methane gas at our Eastern Sanitary Landfill to offset an estimated 21 million kilowatt hours of county electric usage annually. As I mentioned earlier, we're also committed to increasing our funding for rec and ag preservation with a $35 million record funding for bonds in rec and parks, and increasing our funding for ag preservation, which is doubled and now at $4 million. I was also proud to issue an executive order requiring county buildings to be built up to LEED standards. And we're actively partnering with BG&E to install electric vehicle charging stations on county properties. We'll continue to do all that we can to leave behind a more sustainable future for Baltimore County. Now, our commitment to sustainability also should be reflected in our approach to transportation. We want and need to think bigger about our approach. So in Towson, we're about to launch the Towson Circulator this year, an effort we hope to replicate across Baltimore County in the future. In Middle River, we received our second ever transit-oriented development designation. And to reduce congestion, we're also exploring other ways to move forward and imagine new possibilities, whether it's microtransit or dense transit-oriented development in places where it makes sense. We also remain committed to maintaining our existing roadways and keeping residents safe by sustaining our record funding for road resurfacing and traffic calming projects. Improving infrastructure is also more about transportation. We also know that the policies governing our water system are decades old and in need of reform. So we're partnering with Baltimore City on a comprehensive review, and I look forward to working with Mayor Scott to modernize these critical services. Another area that requires our attention, and Councilman Patoka was a great member of this group, is solid waste. Trash going to our landfills has increased from 300 tons per day to over 1,400 tons per day. So in October, we created that task force to develop a new 5-year plan. And we issued a survey to gather input about how to improve our trash and recycling services. That report is being finalized, and I look forward to working with Izzy and the council on a path forward. We're also committed to doing all that we can to keep our communities sustainable and vibrant. We're proud of the work we've done on our main streets and in our communities. So we're continuing to make upstream investments in things like strengthening our neighborhoods and supporting our young people. In particular, we had, for example, a 44% increase from 194 students to 280 this year for those young people who've had new opportunities to have a summer youth experience. And we look forward to continuing that work. We're also planning the construction of 2 new PAL centers in Rosedale and Middle River. And across Baltimore County, we're making investments to revitalize our main streets. Towson has been named a Maryland Main Street affiliate. Reisterstown in District 2 has become our county's second Maryland Main Street. And Catonsville, Music City, Maryland has become our first ever A&E district. Over on the east side, Trade Point Atlantic continues to breathe new life into Ferris Point as one of the biggest e-commerce hubs in the country. I'm also proud that we're leading a county that is now more open, transparent, and accountable than ever before. We've had an unprecedented ethics package when we first came in that did lobbying reform, a now successful charter amendment to establish public financing of elections, and we created the county's first ever inspector general. Last year, we took a number of steps to further heighten accountability and transparency, launching BC Stat, our data-driven performance management system, creating data dashboards, and creating Open Checkbook, which is an expansion of our open budget platform that allows you to track county spending down to the contract level. We also worked with the county council to move work sessions to later in the day. We created an office of community engagement to ensure that every district has a dedicated representative, and you heard from Michelle Bernstein, who is an outstanding rep for District 2 and a great partner for us in the Office of the County Executive. We established a 311 line, and recently we launched, with the council support, the county's first ever enterprise-wide operational efficiency audit. This is an opportunity to rethink county government operations, improve our services, and find meaningful savings where we can. Working with a national firm called Public Works LLC to develop a roadmap to those more efficient and effective operations. And we will continue doing all that we can to make the county more transparent and accountable, especially as we head into recovery from the COVID pandemic. Because after facing an unprecedented crisis like this, we have to work together to pick up the pieces and rebuild. And as we rebuild, we want to make a concerted effort to address the disparities that have always been there. We know we can't just rebuild our economy. We have to improve on it. We have to have a recovery that is holistic, bringing together bold actions to strengthen our business community, support our residents, and address inequities in our communities. As we recover, we plan to put an emphasis on small business and independent businesses on our main streets, and targeting our resources to those industries and businesses that have been hardest hit, like restaurants, movie theaters, and event venues. We also know that some industries like hospitality and tourism have bore the brunt of the pandemic's economic impact. So we want to think creatively about how we can support them. We will continue working with regional partners to develop a robust regional tourism strategy to highlight our homegrown assets right here in Baltimore County. Rest assured, we're putting all of the options on the table to support our businesses, whether it's loan guarantees, investment in our main streets and business corridors, or expanding our small business service center. We believe recovery works best when it's done in partnership and with an open dialogue. So we look forward to hearing from the business community and you about ideas we should be exploring. Because when this pandemic ends, we have to resolve to come back stronger with family supporting jobs. That's why we want to invest more in our Job Connector program and ensuring and sustaining the College Promise program that is making community college affordable and free for more of our young people. As we continue with the recovery, the county will also help our residents meet their basic needs, ensuring continued eviction prevention and food distribution efforts. So in April, I will be introducing the fiscal 22 budget to the county council, to Councilman Patoka and his colleagues. They will review and approve it by May 31st. As we've said throughout our time in office, you have a very important role to play. So we look forward to hearing from you this evening about your priorities. And together, I believe we can set our shared priorities, plan our recovery, and ensure we're positioned to come out stronger when we get to the other side of this. So with that, we'll prepare to open the floor. But first, I'll turn things back over to Amanda to go over a few ways to get your questions in. And again, we thank you for listening in and looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Before we start with our questions, I want to thank those who submitted their questions in advance. The County Executive will answer as many as possible tonight. Just a reminder for those of you watching this through social media, you can ask a question in the comment section and the County Executive will do his best to answer them live. If we can't get to your question tonight, Michelle Bernstein, your outreach coordinator, will follow up with you. Mr. County Executive, would you like me to begin?
Yes, and we'll just add that the councilman should feel free to jump in and respond as well, and make this a little free-flowing as he has additional thoughts to add.
Thank you, County Executive and Amanda.
First question. As the county budget is considered for the upcoming fiscal year, I would like to voice several needs that I hope will not be overlooked. As I understand it, there is money allocated for rental assistance to help those who have been affected by the economic downturn caused by the pandemic. As you well know, our immigrant communities and low-income communities have been hit the hardest by the pandemic. Is the delivery of these funds structured so that those who need it most have access? Are there translators to help with applying for funds, information in languages other than English, funds available to non-citizens, tech help available for those who need it? And in the same vein, is the vaccine accessible to non-English speakers, those without transportation, those who are not citizens, and especially those who are incarcerated? What is the plan to ensure that these most vulnerable people living in Baltimore County have housing, security, and vaccine access?
Thank you for the question. I will just start by saying that we have been we believe that we need to absolutely do all that we can to help our most marginalized in Baltimore County. And we have seen that this pandemic has highlighted what we've already known about the disparities. And so we have put into place many activities and actions to try to address those who've been hit hardest, our low-income communities, those who are incarcerated, our Black and Brown communities, whether it's free transportation to vaccination clinics by calling 311 and we'll pay for Uber to and from, ensuring that we are partnering with organizations like Amigos of Baltimore County. In addition to Councilman Patoka has done some great work with members of the Jewish community to make sure that for kosher meal distribution, we've tried to sort of address all of the challenges that this has brought to bear. Director Watts in corrections has ensured that her inmates, as well as those working in corrections, are vaccinated. So lots packaged there. I'd like to ask the Department of Health and Human Services maybe to speak to as much of it as they can. And then Director Watts, if you or someone from Corrections Zone would like to speak to the those who are incarcerated as well. And if Councilman Patoka has anything to add as well.
This is Dr. Branch from Health and Human Services. I can address the issues with the vaccine. Yes, we are working with our Black and Brown constituents. We're working with the incarcerated, and I'll allow Director Watts to talk specifically about that because we are vaccinating them. And we are vaccinating people who are immigrants and anyone who is, even if they're not a resident of this country, we vaccinate them. We do not ask for those types of IDs by any means. So if you are in the group to be vaccinated, if you are an immigrant or not, we will vaccinate you. And so we are out there in the community and we are doing it at this particular time. I'll turn it over to Dr. Watts.
This is Director Watts from the detention center. We have been working with the health department to identify our vulnerable population, and we have held several vaccine clinics at the detention center, and several inmates have received the vaccine, and we will continue to do so as the vaccine becomes available.
Mr. County Executive, if I could, I want to address the questions about particularly rental assistance and immigrant communities in Baltimore County. This is Terry Hickey, also with Health and Human Services. I help to oversee our eviction prevention programs. I want folks to know that from the very beginning, our programs were data-driven, trying to figure out what neighborhoods had populations with unique vulnerabilities that we needed to address. We've also continued to try to improve the existing eviction prevention programs as we've launched our new wave with additional federal funds, the brand new intake portal that went live again today. You can now download in several languages, including Spanish. We are working with more community organizations to provide outside assistance for those that need help completing those intake forms. And we've been meeting regularly with advocacy organizations to look for any issues and with outreach or any barriers of accessibility to applying for these dollars. Also wanted to let folks know that the new funding that the county executive talked about earlier, we've been wrangling with a number of issues, and this money, in addition to allowing us to go back further to cover up to 12 months of rent, has other characteristics built into it that I think are particularly important for those communities, one of which is no longer requiring formal leases. If you can show a payment arrangement where you're currently living, a number in the immigrant community don't have formal written leases, and that's been a holdup. So a lot of these issues are being addressed. We will continue to improve the program, but we want to make sure that it is accessible to as many people as possible.
Mr. County Executive, if I could just add, our council office in the 2nd District is, we're partnering with 2 Hispanic churches, Iglesias de Dios and Trinity United. Special thanks to our special projects coordinator, Carlos Gonzalez. Both have robust food distribution programs in place, and we're very active with them on a regular basis. In addition, I introduced some legislation to limit rent increases during a state of emergency or pandemic to no more than 3%. It's amazing, but some landlords are increasing rent during a global pandemic, but we're limiting it to a 3% cap. And it'll extend to 6 months after the state of emergency, because people that have lost their jobs won't automatically pick up their jobs immediately upon the end of the pandemic, which hopefully will come soon.
Yeah, Councilman, thank you for your leadership on that issue. I was proud to sign that legislation when it came to my desk. And just additionally, if folks have any technology issues, we are trying to do more with broadband and expanding access. I mentioned the Internet Essentials partnership. For those who don't have access, they can also call 311 to get on the registry or answer any questions that you have. We also do have translation services needs it. So thank you for that question.
Elizabeth and Ned both wrote in with this question. I'm in support of funding for open space and land preservation in Baltimore County's FY22 budget. Can we work to bring Baltimore County's local land preservation funding up to a level that can help leverage the available state dollars and support the work of land trusts and others as they seek projects that forever preserve working farms and other natural lands and resources?
The answer is yes. I believe that our doubling of the budget has ensured that we are, and I intend to continue to grow the Ag Pres and Land Pres budget in subsequent referenda, but I believe we are now in a place where we are maxing out the match for the state, but we want to do even more beyond that. But I will defer to the Director of Planning, Director Lafferty. And Ned, I believe you're part of and working with the Valley's Planning Council. I want to thank you all for the work that you do for land preservation and ag preservation across Baltimore County. But Director Lafferty, if you wanted to weigh in, add anything to that.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Yes, just recently, actually, we were able to put 13 farms into our County Ag Pres program and are working now through the invitations to those farms to come into the program. Similarly, and Ned knows this, we're taking 5 rural legacy areas to the council hopefully next month. So there we can submit those applications to the state so that Piney Run and the others can continue their great work in doing land pres, ag pres work. You also have put more than $4 million in this year's CIP, and it'll bump up to $5 million in 2 years and $6 million the year after, which is a substantial increase, so that our capacity will be increased, so we can buy more land and take land into our Ag Pres program. Similarly, our staff, Megan Benjamin, recently sent out postcards trying to solicit other farms and property owners to come into the program, as they've done in the past, and it's been a very successful way to do some outreach. Again, we continue to support the Land Trust Alliance and the others in their work as they continue to really support the efforts, not just in the bringing land into Ag Pres, but also to support the organizations that are doing that great work. Lastly, I'll say that we will be examining, this is not sort of the large farm or properties, the open space criteria. There's been a lot of concerning questions about how we're going to make sure there's adequate local open space. And we are working to put through a new structure for fees, but also then to put together a work group that'll look at the criteria and the standards by which we're providing more open space in existing communities.
I'm going to ask a couple or make a couple statements from some of the live feeds going on. Bob from YouTube says, we need more road resurfacing in D2. Few other comments. Kelly from Facebook, we need a WPA style program for adults who are out of work. Opportunities for students are great, but their parents need real jobs too.
On that one, Amanda, I just would say to Kelly, if she wants to reach out to us or shoot me an email, it's just johnny@baltimorecountymd.gov. We'd be happy to connect you or anyone looking for employment opportunities to Director Howie in the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. There are lots of opportunities out there on workforce and jobs. And so if you are looking, in fact, please let us know so we can work with you to be placed or anyone you might.
A specific request, Woodholm Elementary School is located on Mount Wilson Lane in Pikesville. The school sits on an incline, creating blind spots for traffic coming from both directions. It is impossible to see pedestrians, cars, and school buses leaving the school grounds until one is in front of the school, creating an area where there have been accidents and many near misses. Please offer consideration to a blinking light or some sort of fixed light on the sides of the road to signal vehicles when they are approaching the school and need to slow down.
Could I just comment on that one? There will be increased traffic on Woodholm Avenue at the school, and I know that this particular request is coming from someone who is well versed in working with students and operating a school, because I believe that comment is from Cheryl Pasteur, our 2nd District elected school board representative, who has a great understanding of student behavior and the environs around the school. So this is one I think we need to take very seriously.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that we are grateful for having such great representation, not just on the council, but on the school board from District 2. And Cheryl certainly has our students' best interests at heart. And we will make sure that our Department of Public Works is looking at it very carefully. I believe that Director Walker or Chief Russell is on tonight and can perhaps just sort of reiterate that we are in fact looking at this, and we'll work with members of the community in the weeks ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CE. It's DeAndrea Walker. Yes, we are on the call and we do understand the safety concerns associated with it. We have looked at some traffic calming measures in that area, but we will consider a blinking light as requested because we're always interested in making sure that safety is a top priority. And if there's other things we can do in the community, we'll definitely look to do that. But we will take it back to the team and continue to look at the options that we have available in our toolbox for sure.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Madam Director.
Two people wrote in with this question. Please provide your strongest fiscal support and encouragement to the county school board to prioritize the renovation and rebuilding of Bedford Elementary School. Bedford students and families are among the most diverse in the county and deserve the same opportunities for improved school facilities as the students in the richest areas of the county. Bedford students have returned to school this week during a pandemic without air conditioning and without physical plant ventilation improvements that the CDC guidance indicates are critical for safe return to in-person learning. Bedford students have gone without for too long. The current state of the building puts some of your most vulnerable students, teachers, and families in the county at risk. You have the opportunity to address this.
Well, I've got some good news. As we said, thank you for reaffirming the importance. I believe that Bedford is in fact part of the Schools for Our Future project. It has been pre-funded by Councilman Patoka and myself for several years now. The state finally did pass the blueprint, which unlocked the Build to Learn Act. So the state has finally put forward their matching funds. I think at this point, we are waiting to understand when the state will release that funding. And we're also working with the school system, encouraging them to move forward with those schools on the Build to Learn Act once we have that funding. Since we are ready to go, I believe the plans are done and they're largely shovel ready. So I think we have a path forward and look forward to addressing the needs of that school. Director Blades or someone from OBF, I just want to make sure I'm giving the right information there.
Yes, sir, you are correct. We have Bedford School is the replacement school is funded on the county side. And it's just a timing issue with the state, and then we'll be ready to go.
Sheila asks about code enforcement. There are several older communities in Pikesville that need to be preserved and maintained. Code enforcement needs to develop initiatives that will insist in keeping the housing and business areas attractive and well maintained. This will encourage people moving to Pikesville to look for housing in established communities rather than purchasing forest properties.
Can I respond to this one?
Please.
Okay. One of the things we learned through the, first of all, let me thank Sheila from the beautiful community of Villanova for an insightful question. What we learned in the code enforcement work group is that over the past 16 years, there's been a significant disinvestment in code enforcement officers, where we had somewhere around 40, 16 years ago when our county was almost 100,000 fewer people. And as we've grown, the number of code enforcement officers have shrunk. And I think, county executive, I think you've ramped that up to some degree, but I think that we need more investment in code enforcement because the trajectory of our county's growth is upward. And over the past 16 years, before you and I were elected at the county level, the investment in code enforcement officers, the trajectory of that graph was going in the wrong direction.
That's right. Thanks, Councilman. Yeah, we did, in fact, increase some investment there. I know that the work group that you were also a part of there had some recommendations about how to further fund, but even absent that, we're going to look at whatever we can do in partnership with the councilman this upcoming budget to do more of the recommendations of the code enforcement work group. There are some great recommendations there. We recognize the needs are great. So we thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
From our pre-submitted questions, Graham asks, please address whether funding can be included in FY 2022 for additional traffic calming and speed enforcement efforts, especially in neighborhoods with limited or no access to sidewalks. Traffic enforcement should be a revenue neutral or revenue positive effort, but I almost never see any attempt at traffic enforcement in my area, which is 21236, even after reaching out to our precinct captain.
Thanks, Graham. The answer is yes. We will absolutely continue funding for traffic calming. It's been something that has been well received across our communities. We're also, candidly, in addition to the budget and Director Blades' perspective, that Director Walker and DPW have been doing a good job of being as nimble as possible and trying to support communities that go through the process of asking for speed calming versus finding ways to say no. Something we're trying to change in our processes. As for traffic enforcement, I will actually turn things over to Chief Hyatt and or someone on her team tonight to talk through the 21136 enforcement efforts and just enforcement efforts generally.
Thanks very much, sir. Well, to begin with, I will get the information from the individual that sent that in from Ms. Carr at the end of the evening, so that way we can follow up directly. But in all of our precincts, including Precinct 3, we have traffic enforcement officers that work to address traffic concerns as they come up. And in fact, I'm aware of several projects that they are working with traffic inspection in reference to a couple of issues that have been brought to our attention and to the attention of other county agencies. But again, when we get any types of concerns or traffic complaints that come in, they get flushed out to the precinct level. And they are and they will be addressed. And certainly if you don't feel like you have received a sufficient response, we'll be happy to connect the precinct captain to you for him to have the team take another look, because they routinely go back out to locations again.
Could I offer two comments? One is Chief Hyde, I just want to say that Captain Buckingham does a great job out in the Franklin precinct. And also, I was at a stream cleanup at Delaney Valley this weekend, and I was driving down Charmouth Road, and I saw the most beautiful traffic calming devices that I've seen in the county. There were bump outs on the side of the road, and there was actually medians with trees on the road. And I thought, this is the way to do it in Baltimore County. So I would ask that Ms. Walker and representatives from DPW to take a look at Charmouth Road in Baltimore County, in Towson, Baltimore County. And if we could replicate that throughout all of the districts, that would be something really special and would really slow down traffic and be safer for our kids.
Will do, Councilman. We will look into it for sure.
Thank you.
Sarah from Facebook asks, what is the timeline for redevelopment of Summit Park Elementary School?
Thanks, Sarah. Again, I think just like the question about Bedford, Summit Park in the very same posture. And we look forward to receiving the state funding so that we can proceed with a new school at that site as part of the schools, finishing the Schools for Our Future program. And I will just say that as we have clarity on exact timing, and as we hear from the state, and as we work with the school board, we will also have Michelle and the Office of Community Engagement follow back up with you all once we have precise timelines and dates as well.
We have had 30 people write in regarding Paul's Farm property, asking that it be added to the program open space project for the following reason. The area is already overdeveloped and lacks sufficient open space for residential recreation uses. This property is needed to help restore the deficiency tree canopy in this area. This impacts the air quality and pulmonary health of residents. Just to mention a few of the reasons they gave us.
Thank you. I will say that Councilman Patoka, and he will probably reiterate this, has impressed upon me the importance of open space across District 2. I have impressed to Director Johnson the importance of open space, and maybe she wants to chime in for a second, or someone from Rec and Parks, about the importance of open space in District 2, and we are fully committed to finding ways forward to invest, and this will certainly be one of the things which we are taking a very serious look at now that we know the community's interest and of the opportunity.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. CE, Mr. County Executive, and Councilmember Patoka. I think when I was doing my meet and greets with the councilman, that's specifically what he shared with me, that he's concerned about park space and actually park buildings in his district. The county executive meets with my team and his senior executives and Madam AO. We were meeting, was it every week? I feel like it was every week. We were meeting every week or every other week to look at program open space and what type of acquisitions we would make. And so the county executive's main goal was to remove any roadblocks or red tape so that we could make these acquisitions using program open space. We had about a $12 million plus unexpended amount for acquisition. And so Powell's Farm is on the list, and we are looking at that property to see if that would be a viable option for us. And I will share, whenever you're negotiating, you don't share how interested or how uninterested you are, but we're looking at all possibilities, and we are moving quickly to be able to assess and get estimates on properties. So that is on the list, and we will look at that as appropriate.
Thank you.
Elliot from YouTube asks, would the county consider a feasibility study of connecting the NCR Trail in Hunt Valley to Lake Roland in District 2?
Great question, Elliot. I have challenged Director Johnson, who was just on the hot spot, to come back again. But I have pushed Director Johnson to try to have as many, if not all, of our parks and open spaces connected. So I believe part of what she is doing with her team is a master plan that will include that work.
Yes, Mr. County Executive, you are 100% correct. We put about $1.5 million in our 22-23 proposed FY-CIP budget. And so that $1.5 million is for trails, and that's to occur concurrently while we're undergoing our master planning process. And if you're out there, you might say, well, I haven't heard anything about the master planning process. And that's because we haven't started it yet, but it's going to be a transparent and inclusive process where we want to hear from everyone. One of the things that we would like to do with our master planning process is have a statistically valid survey so that your priorities are met and we know what your priorities are. And we are hearing that trails are very important, which is great. So when you get that email, you get that information, when the councilman, the county executive, when they send you that information, please make sure you respond because we want your voice to be heard. And yes, Mr. County Executive, you have challenged our department to make it happen. And you've given us the largest bond amount ever that any of our staff can remember in one fell swoop, and that's the $35 million. So we have a lot of plans for that $35 million, and we plan to spread it around the whole entire county.
But we also know that rec has been historically underfunded, and we have incredible needs. And so we hope that this is the beginning of a more meaningful investment in these critical services.
Rec is a great crime fighter too.
Okay, I have quite a few park-related questions, and they're all just slightly different. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to breeze through them all and read them all, and then Mr. County Executive, Councilman, and Director Johnson, you can address them as you wish. One asks, please address the current parking and maintenance access issues for the Red Trail on Falls Road for Lake Roland. Proposed solution is permanent traffic bollards and supplemental gating to allow for maintenance equipment and emergency services access. Jeannie asks, residents of Reisterstown, from homeschool children to retirees, have worked very hard to create the Franklin Woodland Trails, a small community park just off of historic Main Street. The total trail distance is a little over a mile and has been well used during the pandemic. However, this area would be even more utilized by a larger number of people if it were extended approximately 1 mile more with a footpath connecting it to the nearby Reisterstown Regional Park. In addition to having an outdoor location for families to come to enjoy nature, now residents would be able to come and exercise using this new footpath to access 79+ acres at the Baltimore County Recreation and Parks facility. The added benefit, obviously, is opening up one of Maryland's newest Main Street towns to the people who come to use the Reisterstown Regional Park and then use the footpath back to the Franklin Woodlands Trail. Here they will find the county's newest storied trail, co-sponsored by the Baltimore County Public Library and the Reisterstown Association, a nature discovery area. And once the capital improvements are completed, monthly nature programs led by a master naturalist. We ask for the county's assistance in making the creation of this connecting footpath through the allocation of funding and its design. There is a few actually, asking the county to allocate funding to construct a pedestrian, walking, and biking trail from Lake Roland to Mount Washington, allowing for an extension of the now existing Jones Falls Trail East Coast Greenway to Lake Roland, and allocate funding to construct a pedestrian walking and bike trail from Lake Roland to Meadowwood Park, allowing an extension in the now existing Jones Falls Trail East Coast Greenway from Lake Roland to Meadowwood Park. And Jeffrey asked, please allocate additional funding for repairs, maintenance, and staffing at all nature parks, in particular Lake Roland, to address the exponential increase in wear and tear caused by overutilization during the COVID-19 pandemic. The few venues that were once open for recreation and relaxation during the pandemic were a focal point for the public.
I will say, before I let Director Johnson bite into all of that, thank you all for submitting those questions. I think it reinforces just how much people cherish our rec and parks resources and facilities, and it's why we have to invest more in them. It's why we are investing more in them. So I also, Gina, I want to thank you for your work on the Franklin Woodland Trail and the Lake Roland Nature Council for their work too. I think that particular one, we just need some specifics to look into, but Roz, if you have a couple of thoughts on some of these great ideas or suggestions to look into.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. County Executive, and thank you for those great questions. Lake Roland with the bollards, that's a state piece, so we do need to get the state's approval before we put those bollards up. So thank you to the Lake Roland Nature Council for working with us on that. And with that, Pat McDougall and our office is working with the state as well to try and get approval for those bollards. Franklin Woodlands Trail is something that's very important to us as well. That one's a little bit trickier because it's not all county property, or it's different county departments property. So I know the county executive's office is working with that. Some of that is school property. So again, they're working to get through that process, or help us get through that process so that we can accomplish the goals for the Franklin Woodlands Trail. Lake Roland to Mount Washington, this is a great example of what the master plan will help us with. In the county, we know that we're negative trails, but we don't know how many miles of trails that we should actually have. So that's one of the pieces that our master plan will help us with. It will help also identify the best places to add trails. So I think that will come out of the master plan with the Lake Roland and the Mount Washington Trail connection there. And then COVID at Lake Roland and many of our nature parks, wear and tear. We had the largest increase in park usership in the state. We had a 224% increase during COVID, and that's based on the Google Mobility COVID-19 data. And so because we had that large increase, one of the requests that we put in with the CARES funding was to be able to make some of those repairs, such as the erosion, such as some of our pavilions that were in disrepair, because the focus is more people are outside, more people are creating and blazing their own kind of well-worn trails. So that money was set to expire at the end of December, but fortunately that funding has been extended. So that's something we can look at. I know initially we weren't able to get any engineering plans if the projects needed engineering. We weren't able to get that done by the end of December. But the good news is that we, since it's extended, we do believe that we'll be able to look at some longer term options now. So we'll make sure we put that on the list. And I think those were all the questions. Thank you.
Nice job, Ms. Johnson.
Parks are an investment in our future, so we're happy to be doing it.
County Executive, if I could share an observation with you. As I mentioned, I was at a stream cleanup this past weekend, and there were so many families out cleaning up the stream because in this COVID environment, it was a great outdoor activity for families to share and engage each other outdoors. And it was really heartening to see that. And I think we'll see more of that this spring, not only using of parks, but cleaning of parks and streams and our waterways.
Pat from Facebook asks, can we devote some funds to fighting litter? More signs, funds for police overtime, cameras in heavy litter areas. Litter hurts our abilities to attract businesses and affect our property values. Requiring owners and businesses to maintain litter-free properties would be great.
Well, Pat, thank you for all your help with litter cleanup in Reisterstown. I think that is certainly something we could explore. I don't know if a member of the team wants to pick it up.
County Executive, this is Dave Likens, Director of Environmental Protection and Sustainability. Now, while we don't have something in Reisterstown, we do have a trash and litter TMDL in the Gwens Falls. And we're developing strategies, as you said earlier, to reduce trash and litter from people walking down the street and just dropping things on the sidewalk. So we're, rather than put in structures where we try to collect it all and just continue to invest in collecting trash and litter, we're actually doing a study this spring where we're trying to change people's behavior, and we're trying to do it through advertisements and through education and outreach, and ultimately try to change people's behavior so we have less trash and litter expended. So we're working at it from that angle.
We received a couple pre-submitted questions regarding the Pikesville Armory, ranging in request what we could do with the Pikesville Armory. So I'll just read a couple. We're writing to urge the county executive to continue and to increase the county's support for the redevelopment of the historic Pikesville Armory. The newly formed nonprofit Pikesville Armory Foundation has been included in the state's FY22 budget in the governor's capital budget bill, and an additional $500,000 in the bond bill sponsored by Senator Hedelman and Delegate Carden. We respectfully ask that the county match that commitment to this project, which would represent a once-in-a-generation opportunity to provide resources for recreation, cultural art, open space, youth development, and historical conservation, not only for the 2nd District, but for the whole county and a metro area. Armory revitalizations have been success stories across the nation. If the Pikesville Armory redevelopment project fails to become a reality, the campus will become a blight and a nuisance, and we will have squandered a priceless opportunity for Baltimore County. This request is made by the Board of Directors and also by the founding organization of the Pikesville Armory Foundation.
Well, I just want to thank everyone who has been working on this critical project. We are proud to have supported with some initial funding to do some pre-development work, and we were excited to support the request. We were hopeful to get more money from the governor, but I want to thank District 11, Senator Hedelman, Delegates Stein and Carden and Bel Castro for their work, along with Councilman Patoka, to be such strong advocates. We will be looking to do something locally in addition to what the state is doing. So we'll continue to support them this session to make sure the money comes, to do what we can locally, and to make this project come to fruition. I know Councilman Patoka has been a champion and someone pushing it hard. I don't know if you wanted to add, Councilman.
No, thank you, County Executive. Certainly, this is a top priority for the 2nd District, for me personally, as the councilman. And we have so many advocates for something positive, and we all believe that the Pikesville Armory redevelopment could be transformative to the revitalization of the entire Pikesville area, where it could be not only a local destination, but also a regional destination as well. One of the things that we are hoping we can do quickly, maybe as step one, is to activate the exterior, which if we were working hard towards that before COVID came about, where there was less of it, we couldn't gather together. So it lost a little steam, but COVID is not going to be here forever, and we can activate that exterior, get some synergy around the project. We need the state military department to be more responsive to the local council member and to take care of their property on our main street, and also allow some access once COVID is over. But first of all, that the state needs to be a little bit more responsive, especially the military department, because they're not taking care of their property that's on our main street. And so I'm going to say that because I believe it. I ride by it every day, and it's a mess. And I do believe that activating that exterior could be phase one of something that could be transformational for Pikesville and the region.
Create a more humane and successful shelter. Of course, such issues were put on hold to focus on COVID, but there is an animal shelters expert who has offered her services for free, and as we get closer to what new normal, we need to start preparing for such an assessment. No matter what format the expert suggests, whether they recommend the shelter stay in the hands of the county or that a public-private partnership be created, i.e. BARCs, this is an opportunity for the county to be introduced to and evaluate changes that can create substantial savings for the taxpayers and harness the knowledge of experts. I ask that you start to look at this issue more closely and would be glad to help get this assessment going.
I know that my senior advisor, Sam O'Neill, has been working on this issue a lot. I don't think she's on tonight, so I can have her follow up. I could also have HHS maybe weigh in on your question. But we are happy to look at any sort of opportunity for partnership and to make ourselves continue to be better in the years ahead.
This is Dr. Branch, and yes, Sam O'Neill was working on that, obviously prior to the COVID happening. So I agreed to Mr. CE that Sam would be the best person to follow up in regard to that.
Please forgive me if I mispronounced your name. Raksha from Facebook asks, for more than 10 years, a de facto coalition has asked the board to change its regulations regarding yard size for backyard poultry in order to enhance our quality of life. Can we have an audience with the council or the planning board to discuss this once more? Spring is upon us this month, and children are anxiously waiting the go to begin their animal stewardship and feel the pulse of renewed hope for a better day once our isolation abates.
So I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that requires a change to the county code, and you have at least a partial audience with your council member tonight. Councilman, I think that there's also an opportunity for public input at the end of your council meetings. Is that right?
Yes, there is, and it's actually not been as active as it has been pre-COVID. When we were meeting in an in-person setting, there was a greater opportunity for input. Less so now, but I'm happy to bring this issue to my colleagues. I think we received an email on this, and I'm happy to share it with my colleagues for discussion.
Laura from Facebook asks, good evening, would you please take into consideration speed bumps on Campfield Place? We have a blind curve on Campfield Place, and I have almost been hit while in my yard or exiting my driveway numerous times. We also have a great concern for students attending Sudbury Magnet and neighboring schools, and for those that take walks on our little streets. One side does not have a sidewalk, which leaves individuals walking along the street in grave danger, while those that speed through our street have nothing making them slow down. I've tried traffic calming many times to no avail. I ask you please consider our safety on Campfield Place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, Laura. I will again defer to Director Walker of Public Works, who I know is trying to take a look at these questions and these requests with fresh eyes and to try to be as pro-community friendly as possible if there is strong support. My approach has been if the community really wants it and there's not a really strong, compelling public safety reason to not do it, we want to try to work with communities to get it done.
County Executive, if I could add, so Campfield Place may be a location where we need to revisit, but I do want to thank you and your Department of Public Works for doing raised crosswalks at about 4 intersections along Campfield Road near Sudbrook Middle School and Bedford Elementary School, all the way to Essex Road. So thank you for the good work there. I think it's a real benefit to the safety on Campfield Road. So maybe we'll have to revisit Campfield Place so that we can complete our work for pedestrian safety in that area. But thank you. It looks good. and it has good functionality as well.
Mr. C, as you mentioned, looking at things with a fresh set of eyes, I did hear our constituent say that she has done the traffic calming application a few times. So what I would ask is that I get the information from Amanda and we do a new look at the area and see. I do think that there's some other options that we have available to us besides just speed humps. And I'm willing to go out and take the team out and take another look at it with the councilman to see if there's some other options we can offer up in this area.
Thank you, Madam Director.
A pre-submitted question. A few ideas for neighbor space. The Kiwanis building, which has reverted back to the state, be made into a first-class children's playground with the use of building located thereon. Number 2, that the paper road owned by the county that was closed, Castellon, next to the medical building on Green Tree Road, could be made into a pocket park. That the Pikesville Library and Senior Center might be moved after redevelopment and enlarged in the Pikesville Armory. And that the existing Pikesville Library building be dedicated to some type of retail use. That the lawn in front of the State Police building at the southeast corner of Sudbrook Lane and Reisterstown Road be dedicated to a pocket park, and that the land owned by the state at the intersection of the Beltway entrance and the Stevenson Road could also be made into a pocket park. That is a portion of the land along Park Heights Ave just below the Beltway exit to be used as a park area. And those are a lot of ideas, so I'm going to just roll into the next one, which is in similar subject. 6 people asked this. I've learned that there are problems with the county's open space law that are making open space storages worse. First, that the law is not being enforced. Second, that the law has a giant loophole that allows developers to pay open space fees to the county and provide off-site enhancements instead of open space. In some cases, developers have used this loophole to provide enhancements to neighboring communities in order to squelch their opposition to the project. The result is that communities like mine that need open space continue to go without it. For these reasons, please fix the open space law and its enforcement so it creates open space where it's really needed and there is more money to create and maintain parks, trails, and natural areas in communities like mine.
Thank you. First of all, Alan, I appreciate all of your thoughts to improve Pikesville. We love pocket parks and we love lots of opportunities. So we do have the revitalization plan. We have opportunity sites identified, open space acquisitions. We'll be working with the councilman and all of you to pursue that. I also know that we are in fact trying to move towards the open space law challenges and changes. And maybe we'll defer to Director Lafferty again to sort of give an update on what we're doing with some of the open space work in Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Yes, first of all, I totally agree. We really love pocket parks and identifying those locations where we might be able to partner with the community to provide spaces that are really servicing the neighborhoods is truly welcome. So I can follow up after this with Amanda as to specific locations. We have proposed, and this is working through the system, to get a new fee schedule set up for our fee waiver for open space. And subsequent to that, we will be convening a working group to look at the we know, and as more infill development is occurring, that the availability of open space becomes more and more important. I have been in touch with the leadership of Neighbor Space and had many conversations with them about some of the thinking that they have as to how we can proceed, and expect to actually be bringing people together in the very near future.
Could I add an observation, just in terms of pocket parks? they're more impactful in the more urbanized parts of the county. And as we get more suburban, we need larger areas and pocket parks. So for example, the area around Paul's Farm is more suburban than urbanized. And so that's why I think there's a request for a larger area than just a pocket park. And where there's high density, those pocket parks work really well. It's just an observation that I just wanted to share with you, Director Lafferty and County Executive.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that.
John submitted a question. He says, Baltimore County Public School is extremely deficient in planning and execution of the emergency operation plan. I'm not saying what decisions need to be reached, but I am 100% confident that these decisions are not defendable. I believe he's referring to the pandemic. As the funding authority, the county executive has an explicit duty to ensure government funds are being executed according to a defined process, even in a contingency environment.
Thanks, John. I can't really speak to the day-to-day operations of the school system, as we don't have day-to-day operational authority of the school board or of the superintendent. We have offered connecting the system to MEMA. We also have offered the support services of Johns Hopkins to the school system as they continue to make their decisions. But ultimately, I think a lot of folks are surprised to learn that the county is a fiscal agent for the school system, and about half of our budget goes to BCPS, and we're proud to support it. I think the councilman and I are proud to be big supporters of public education, but we do not have day-to-day operational control over those kinds of decisions. And just to introduce her to all of you, she's, I guess, not as new as it was a few weeks ago, but Dr. Jennifer Lynch is on if you want to just introduce yourself. Our coordinator, director of educational partnerships for Baltimore County, to work with the school system and all of you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Yes, I'm Dr. Jennifer Lynch. I am the Director of Educational Partnership, and I do work with Baltimore County Public Schools to strengthen the partnership and to really talk about ways that we can support Baltimore County Public Schools, as you had suggested before. We don't have any authority over the day-to-day operations, but that doesn't mean that we aren't committed to partnering with Baltimore County Public Schools for the interest of our constituents and our families.
Herb from Facebook asks, thanks, well, it's more thanks. Thanks for helping Reisterstown become a Main Street, Maryland town. We would like to see the county try to acquire some available open space for public use in an area adjacent to our Franklin Woodland Trail project. It would be a welcome amenity for our citizens.
Herb, thank you for your leadership, for the effort. We're proud to do it. And if we can find relevant opportunities, we certainly want to partner with you. We love open space, especially when it's tied to other great opportunities in Reisterstown and across the county.
It looks like we do not have any more that have come in from social media. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman, before we wrap, do you have any last words?
Oh, I just want to thank you, County Executive, for bringing your team to the 2nd District, and thank all the participants that joined us tonight and all of the thoughtful comments that we heard. I think it's interactions like this with the community level, engaging the County Executive and his team and council member is the best way to move Baltimore County in the right direction.
So thank you all.
And I'll just echo the councilman's thoughts. Thanks everybody for joining, for your engagement. This is great. We had so many questions. We will follow up with you in addition to the conversation tonight. Thank you, Councilman Poca, for your partnership. Thank you, Amanda, for moderating. And thanks to all the team members of Baltimore County for being present and for being present for our residents. So I hope everyone is staying safe. Look forward to being with you in person next year. In the meantime, wear a mask, practice social distancing, and get a vaccine when you can. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.